Square pegs in round holes. So let's start by looking at why multi-terms sometimes seems complicated. I personally think the first reason is because very often people say it is. So you're defeated before you even start. The second is related to its flexibility, and because there's no rigid or defined structure for multi-term term bases out of the box. A multi-term term base can take the form of any structure you like, and that's really what makes it the tool of choice for terminologists around the world. But it's also why you need a separate application, and it's also one of the reasons why translators sometimes find this a little complicated to use. So let's look at a little bit more detail to explain this. So for example, here you see a simple glossary. It's just got source and target terms. And for most translators, this is all they really want. They just use it as a mechanism for some consistency and for speeding up their work. But a terminologist might want to do a bit more. So something like this. Here they might make this term base available to many people where translation isn't the only use case. Here's another example. When translating or authoring, a material like this or a term base can be invaluable to people when they're working. And it doesn't have to be as complicated as this. So how do you make a file like this? Well, to start off with, let's just talk about the structure of the term base. So all term bases have this basic bones to start with. It's called the entry structure. And here you have an index level, an entry level, and a term level. And you can add fields to these bare bones to represent what it is you're trying to use the term base for. So a simple bilingual glossary with only terms for each language pair would look like the entry structure on the left. You'd only have an entry level, an index level, and a term level. If you customize it a little bit, with the same terms by adding more data to it, the entry structure could look like the one on the right. So there you might have a field name for the client and a field that contained an image or a video, for example. That would be the media. You could put this anywhere you like. Here I've shown it at the entry level. At the index level, you might add a definition for the term or some information relating to how that term is used in practice. And at term level, you might add part of speech. So whether it's a verb, a noun, a pronoun, whatever you wanted, how to pronounce it, what the status is, whether it's confirmed or whether it's a temporary term, it's not been approved for use yet. It could really take the shape of anything you like. And if we look at this in multi-term, just to give you a better idea of what that structure would look like, it becomes a little bit clearer because then you can see how that structure might look when it becomes a term base. Now, let's just take a quick look at all the files, the different types of files that you have that are associated with multi-term, because I think this is also going to help to understand what we want to talk about. So first of all, if somebody sends you a term base to use, it can be just one file like this, the SDLTB file. As soon as you double click it, you might end up with something like this. These are index files. So the term base file, the SDLTB, you can share this on its own. The index files, as soon as somebody opens the SDLTB, these are all created and you get one pair for each index. So here you can see this particular term base had 3 languages in it, Danish, English and French. And as soon as you open it, you're then going to have an MDF file and an MTF file for each index file or each language. And we have a term-based record locking file. This is used to control access to the term base to try and prevent it from being corrupted. Essentially, a multi-term file-based term base is just a Microsoft Access database. So if you have too many people entering it at the same time, for example, very often you'll find that one person can't get in because it gets locked. And that's because it's not designed to be used by multiple translators. It is possible, people do it, but it's not supported and it's nothing that multi-term is responsible for other than the fact that it's because it's based on a Microsoft Access database and that is not designed for multiple access. Not like this. We have group share where you can run multi-term on a server and that works within SQL, and there you can have as many people as you like accessing a term base, writing to it, reading to it all at the same time. You can't do that with a file-based term base. And then these are the interesting bits that we want to talk about, our multi-term definition files. and the XML files which contain the terminology data themselves. If you're working with multi-term convert or you're importing, exporting, this is where you're going to come across these definition files, and these are the files that are important to understand when it comes to importing and exporting files. So let's just talk about the basics of that just very quickly. So we have the basics. In this first term base, we can see we have the multi-term XML. So this is all the data you want to import into a file, and these two parts here are the definitions of these term bases, the multi-term XTD. When you import a term base data with the same definition, it goes in perfectly sweet. When you import one with a different definition, it doesn't fit. And you wonder why, and it's because the term bases just have different definitions, so the keys don't fit. So that's enough on that. Let's just dip our toes into the water a little bit and take a look at the tools themselves and see how they handle these types of things. So I've opened up Multiterm 2015, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open up 4 different term bases. These ones I've got here. We'll open them all up together. Now these term bases all have totally different definitions. So if I click over onto my term base management and then click on the definition, you can see that this one called 002-glossary contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 languages, and within the entry level there's 3 fields. The index level's got 1 field, and the term level has another 3 fields. And then down here you can see the different descriptions telling you the type of fields that they are. So there you can see I've got a couple of pick lists, I've got some text fields and a multimedia file, which would have been the image that we actually saw here. If I look at this one, for example, the dog breed names, and I click on the definition for that, it's got even more languages, and then it's got a lot more fields, but they're pretty much all at the entry level, apart from the speech, which is how the dogs say woof, which is down there at the term level. If I look at the e-anatomy, under the definition, only 5 languages this time, less fields, but it could be exactly what you need to use. And down here I've got an even simpler one, which is just the bilingual glossary. It contains nothing but the terms, and if I look at the terms in here, click on that one and browse, you can see that here I've got just terms. So that's actually the same as the slightly more complicated one, but it's only the terms themselves. So 4 different term bases, 4 different sets of terms. Now if I just close some of these for a second, because what I want to do is just show you how to export. Oops, sorry, that's not what I want to do. I want to close the term base. Close the term base. So we'll keep this one here. And what I'm going to do is, on the term base management, I'm going to go to my definition and first of all export the definition. Actually, I'm not going to export it, you save it. So I can either right click and save, or just select it and click on save. And then I give it a name. I'll leave it like that, definition for 002 glossary, and save it. In fact, let me just put that into another folder. So I'll create a new folder in here, and I'll save it in there. Then what I want to do is I want to export all the information that's inside this term base into a multi-term XML file so that I can import it in again and show you how it works. So I'm going to export, process, give it a name in the new term base, that will do, and I'll just call it new term base data. Save that, next, next, done. That's it. So what I should now have, if I just close this term base, so I've got no term bases open there, I come back over here and I go into my new term base. In here I've got the multi-term XML file that contains all the data, the XTD file, which is my definition, a log file, which if I look in the log file, this just tells me what they just did. So it's just told me how many entries were there, and the name of the definition, where the files are, how they were sorted, whether it was complete or not. And in here I have a folder with all the images. And these will all be referenced inside the definition file, so I can actually find that data when I recreate it or when I import it. So first of all, we're going to recreate a new term base. So I'll show you how to do that using the term base definition file. So you click on File, Create Term Base, and I'm going a little bit quick here, but you can play the video back. It should be easy enough to do. We'll call this my multifarious test, so it has a different name, and we'll put it there. Next, we're going to load the existing term-based definition file, so that's the one I've just created, which is that one there. I open that, click on Next, give it a friendly name, multifarious, click on Next. Here's all my languages already selected because they were within the term-based definition. All of my fields because they were in the definition. The structure of those fields because they were in the definition, and finish. And that's it. I've now created a new term base, and if I click on the term base management and go to definition, you can see that it matches the one that I showed you previously, already set up, ready to go. So now I could import some data based on that same structure, and it would import straight into here. So I can click on Import, Process, Browse, and go and pick up the data file, which is this one here. Open. Next. I have to give it an exclusion file. That's just because if it misses anything out, it will write the information into this file, so I can go and check it and do something with it. Click on the import. It's processed all 27 entries, but notice it has told me there were some irregularities, so there's something wrong. So I'm going to click on OK, Next, Finish, and you'll see that actually within my terms are actually there. So it has brought everything in. So it begs the question, what actually is wrong? So if I go and take a look in the log file that was created, so in all these files somewhere, you can see the LDB file, there's the logging file, because I've still got the term base open. Here's my log file. If I look at that and see what actually has happened, first it tells me what I actually did with that import, then it shows me all the entries, and it tells me the following values are not defined in existing pick list. So I've missed from my pick list adverb. So within the multi-term XML, within that original term base, somewhere there was actually an adverb in there, and it's been missed from the definition. So what I can do is I can redo that import, so I could create the term base again and re-import it after having corrected the term base, or I can just go into here, go to my definition, I can edit my definition, go to my, where was it, part of speech, click on properties, and you can see I'm missing an adverb from there. So if I plus adverb, next, finish, and you can see now I have the adverb in there. And if I click over to my terms, it was a Russian to, English to Russian, I'm going to find it, English to Russian, English, and I think it was the first hand. Down there you can see, yep, adverb, part of speech. So it has brought the data in, and it's now the pick list is corrected, and if I was to import more data later on that contained adverb in there, I wouldn't get that error because I've just corrected it. So the log file can be quite useful sometimes in helping you to correct things. Now that's how you would import something, export information and import it back in if the structures are all the same. If they're not the same, then it gets more complicated. But I'm going to do away with multi-term now because I've shown you the basics of how that works, and I'm going to show you an easier way to do it. So I'm going to first of all come up here, and I'm just going to delete my new term base, and I'm also just going to delete all these index files because they're just getting in the way for seeing what's there at the moment. Delete that too. So I'm going to start up the glossary converter. Now the cool thing about the glossary converter, the first thing to note is that under the general tab, when you go into the settings, you can see there you've got a multi-term term-based definition file. This is extremely useful, and I'll show you why. If you click that and then click OK, if you take your, say it's simple glossary for example, and drag and drop it into here. And say it picks up all the fields that are in there. In this case, it was a simple glossary, so there's nothing in there but terms. Click on OK. I can exit that now, and you'll see what it's produced is the XTD file and the XML. So I didn't have to open it up, process an export, or save the XTD as two separate operations. I just drag and drop and click, and I get both files automatically. This is really great because if you wanted to send this to somebody else, they could now use that to create their own term base, and they could import whatever XML file you gave them. But that's not the only thing I want to look at. What I want to look at is merging. So if I start this up again and go to my settings, and this time I'm going to make sure multi-term term base is checked, because I don't want to create a term base definition file and an XML file. This time I want to create a new term base. I'm going to click on the merging. There's various options here, and I recommend you go and read the help to look at these, but I'm going to show you the basics of how this works. So you click on merge files. I'm not going to pick the field at this point because I'll have an opportunity to do that during the merge process, as you'll see. I'm going to tell it to merge on languages because I want to merge on the languages, because all I want is just a simple term base. So out of all 4 of those term bases, or only 3 term bases I'm going to use actually, because the simple glossary and the enhanced glossary contain the same terms. The enhanced just has more fields in there. So I'm just going to take the enhanced glossary, the e-anatomy and the dog breed names, and create a new term base that contains only terms, nothing else. So I'm going to forget the fact that they're different definitions and just take the terms. So I'm going to merge it on the languages. So I click on the general again and say OK. And you'll notice here that what's happened in the middle, I now have these extra little traffic lights that are telling me here that I've actually set this up ready to do some merging. And I'm going to be merging on language. It's a warning to remind me, because I don't always want it to be doing something like that, because it's going to create a new term base. So I click on the dog breed names, the e-anatomy and the enhanced glossary. Come down here and drag and drop all 3 into there. Now, what you can actually see here is, because I've done this before, I'm just going to turn those ignores on and off. What you would see is something like that. So it's recognized all of the fields that were in that term base and has shown them to me here. So what I want to do is I'm going to select them all like that, ignore them all, and then I'm just going to say don't ignore the English and the German. So I'm going to create a new term base with all those terms just containing English and German terms. That's it. So I click on OK for that one. It now brings up all the definition for the next one. It's done the same thing. You can see I've done this before, but I'm going to ignore the Portuguese because I don't want Portuguese. So I just want the English and the German. Okay, and there's my third one. I've done it before, so it's remember what I did before. I just want the English and the German. So really simple. So it's shown me the definition for all 3. I've just picked the fields that I want by ignoring all the rest and click on OK. It then tells me which field do I want to synchronize on, an entry field or a language. I'm going to synchronize on a language. So tell it to synchronize on English language. Say OK. It's processed 3 files. I can now exit that, and what you can see is I get a new term base called dog breed names output merged. Now I can delete these index files, so if I didn't want it to be called that, if I wanted it to be called something else, I can rename it here and call this my multifarious bilingual, like that. When I open this one up and double click it, what I get, oh, you're seeing a different layout here now. This is actually multi-term 2017, so you're getting a bit of a advanced look at this. You can see that I've got all the terms down here. So abdomen, abdominal cavity, they were in my anatomical database. I've got some dogs here, Australian cattle dog, things like that. They were in my dog database. And then I've got words like balance and combustible and endorsement that were in my my normal database. But they're all there together in just one database now. And if I click on my term-based management and go to my definition, you can see that that's what it is. It's just a simple term base with nothing else in there. And if I click on the term base itself at the top there, instead of the 27 terms I had in there originally, now I've got 73 German terms, 51 English terms. In total 46 separate entries, so I've got some synonyms in there, which is why there are more. But that's it. So it's really takes a lot of the work out of it when you use the glossary converter for doing this, and it's very simple to be able to merge things together. Now what I haven't done is covered anything that might happen if you're dealing with homonyms and synonyms, where things can get a little bit more complicated and you've got duplicate terms and things like that. Really, if you're tackling a lot of things like that, you can do something with that using the glossary converter by stipulating which is going to be your master term base. So in here you would set a master term base, and this would allow you to use that as the default. So if there were homonyms or synonyms, it would take the master term base as the one that was the rule, and should help you resolve the rest of the terms. It may not always work perfectly. If you use multi-term for the imports, multi-term has more options for an import and can allow you to decide what you want to do with synonyms, what you want to do with duplicates, whether you want to merge on entries, whether you want to merge on different things. There are more options when you're using multi-term. But if you're just merging a number of different term bases that you created, and all you really want is a simple thing, as I've just shown you, this is by far the easiest way to do it, because you haven't got to mess around with exporting and importing. You just drag and drop all the term bases into one place. Okay, so that's it. That's all I want to show you. That was really quick. I fully appreciate that. It's 15 minutes long, something like that. And I hope it gives you some idea of where to look and what to do, and maybe even if it explains to you how to do exactly what it is you need to do, because you're only dealing with a simple term base. That's it.